Viewers, listeners, welcome to another episode of Blighty Talks Bricks. My guest today is someone that I don't know. We haven't actually even spoken on the telephone, so I've literally met him probably 4 or 5 minutes ago. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I'm not sure where it's going to go. He's a former rugby professional, plied his trade at places like Bristol, Exeter Chief, Worcester Warriors, and was also in the England Sevens team. Fly half, so you know what that means. They're good looking, quick, smart. So I'm looking forward to that conversation about rugby. But he's also an experienced property professional with both skills across sectors in all elements of property. He now actually moved into the tech space and runs a property business there called Zump, which I think he started a few years ago. He's the founder and CEO of that business, so I'm sure we're going to have a good chat about that as well. Danny Gray, welcome to Blighty Talks Bricks. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for your time. How are you?
I'm good. Nice trip up to London. Always nice to get to London.
So where's home for you?
Chichester.
Very nice part of the world.
Yeah, it's lovely.
And you get up to town much?
Probably once a month or so for meetings or whatever, yeah. But it's nice. I do like coming up to town.
London's a special place, isn't it?
It is,
very special. Before we get into the business world, I just want to touch on rugby.
Yep.
Your chosen sport, or was you just bloody good at it?
It was my chosen sport. I loved it. I was obsessed from day one, to be honest, from 6 years old. Totally obsessed.
And would you have a local side down in that part of the world?
Yeah, so Chichester was the local side, and funnily enough, I've gone full circle, and I'm now coaching my son at Chichester Rugby Club.
Are you really?
And my dad coached me at Chichester Rugby Club, so yeah, it's kind of nice.
And how many years was you in the professional game?
About 12 years.
Yeah. And was that something that your school did, rugby? I mean, when I ask, I'm probably as a leading question here. Most of the people I've come across from rugby, middle class, upper class. Funnily enough, where we're filming here, my school, Dainford, literally 3 minutes from here, concrete jungle. We didn't have a blade of grass in sight. Yet we were a rugby school, even though it was a very, very working class environment.
Yeah.
Was yours sort of?
We were lucky. I was at state school, and we were lucky to have a guy who was head of sport at Chichester High School that loved rugby, and so he just did everything he could to make rugby a thing at the school, and kind of gave us a good opportunity to play there. He also got us into playing with the other private schools, which was a massive thing because the other state schools in the area never really played rugby. No. Never would have gone to a private school to play rugby, and we used to go to these private schools, and I'd just be like, oh my god, it's like Hogwarts kind of thing. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, I get that.
And you know, I just remember getting to the stage where I was going to rugby trials, Sussex, and then London and South East, and then England, and then as you go up the levels, you have fewer and fewer state school kids, and then at the end, I was kind of like one of maybe two. Yeah.
It does exist, doesn't it? It's. I don't know if it's obviously not a deliberate thing, but as you work your way up, it seems that the state school levels just seem to drop out a little bit.
Yeah, it's an opportunity thing. It's not an equal opportunity. So you have a vast pool of players in private school playing rugby, and yes, they'll get cut as they go up the levels, but you have a very small pool of players playing at state school, and they also get cut as you got the levels.
It just reduces the numbers down.
It just reduces. So by the time you get to the top, you've got like 1 or 2 state school and all of the rest private.
Is that something that the RFU, in your opinion, address, or is it something that schools? I mean, obviously, it's a tough game. It's a bit. I used to box as well, badly, as I played rugby badly. But is it something schools don't want to get involved in rugby so much because of the physicality side to it?
Back when I was playing at school, that wasn't an issue, I don't think, for parents.
Right.
I just think it was a bit of an elitist sport back then. As time's gone on, that's maybe not so much of an issue, although it's still definitely there. I think the concern that parents have these days is much higher than it was back then with the head injury stuff.
Yeah.
So I think, but it's just a case of the private schools just play rugby. They all play rugby.
It's just what it is,
It
isn't it?
is just what it is.
And as you say, it's a numbers thing, isn't it?
And the school that I used to go to doesn't play rugby anymore because the guys left.
Does it not?
Yeah. So, if I was there now, I don't know. I don't know if I would have done what I've done.
Talking about you, was you said from a 6-year-old you wanted to play rugby. Did you know you were good?
Yeah.
You have to work at it. Everyone has to work at it.
Yeah.
But did it come natural to you?
The skills bit came naturally for sure. And I just loved getting the ball. Like I loved getting the ball and
in rugby, I love getting rid of the ball. As soon as I got it, I wanted to get rid of it quickly.
People would say, "Oh, you stand out and whatever at that club level." And I just loved it. Either way, I just loved it. And I used to just watch them playing on TV or whatever.
Try and copy that.
And I'd just be like, well, I can pass the ball and run. Why? And other people would say, oh, you can't be a professional rugby player. Well, how are you going to do that? I'm like, well, they're just doing what I think I can do anyway, so I'm just going to keep going.
So how did your career, how did you get into it? So you're playing for the school side.
Yeah.
Probably one of the star players in the school side. You've mentioned earlier you've been spotted, you're moving on to... How did that sort of journey weave its way?
Bit of a strange journey for me, actually, because I did do the age group stuff and went up to the kind of England trials and whatever. But because Chichester Rugby Club didn't really have like a pathway at that point, which they do now, kind of, to Quins Academy. Yep. I met one of my friends who I played at London and South East, was at Bath Rugby Club in the academy, and he said, "Oh, why don't you come down to Bath and have a trial down there for the academy?" So from Chichester, I went down, had a game.
Did he want part of your salary going forward after that?
So I went down, had a game, went really well, and they said, yeah, we'd like you to join the academy up here. And so I then spent my mum then spent 2 years driving me from Chichester to Bath 2.5 hours, 3 times a week.
Really?
Yeah, because there wasn't really anything around here. And I took it for granted back then, she driving 3 times a week for 2.5 hours is pretty crazy when I think about it now.
It is crazy.
But they just did whatever they needed to do to support me. I then realised very quickly that elitist thing was prevalent in rugby clubs as well as kind of schools. Right. And so I wasn't a Colston's boy.
So that went against you?
And that went very much against me. Whether they like to admit it or not, it is what it was.
No, I think there's a lot of stuff that nobody wants to admit.
Yeah, and so I just say it how it is, and I quite quickly kind of just lost interest. I was like, I'm not going to be putting myself on the line here if this isn't going to go anywhere. So I then went to Bath Uni, played for the uni, transferred to Bristol Academy. Yep. And that's kind of where things started to happen for me. Now, I was in the kind of playing in the under-19s in Bristol Academy, and at that point, Bristol had like a shogun team. They had like Pisho and Contepomi and all those guys, yep. But they got relegated. And when they got relegated, everyone left. And so they were in what was back then Division 1. Yep. And all they had was the under-19, under-21s boys. And
so their failure, their troubles gave you a great opportunity.
Massive, because I was then going from under-19s rugby to playing full men's Division 1 rugby, which is incredibly physical and still a very decent level. Yeah. Spent 3 years there, and then in the third year we got promoted to the Premiership. So that was like quite an interesting, unique, I guess, pathway opportunity for me.
Some things happen for a reason, don't they?
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
And so Bristol got up, and then you got sort of tap on the door, so to speak?
Yeah, so I had a great time at Bristol. It was my favourite club that I was at for sure. It was a great city. And things went really well there in general, but they brought another number 10 in who was an unbelievable goal kicker. And I struggled to kind of get past that with the coach. Yeah. And so it just happened that Exeter were on the rise at that point. Yeah, came from nowhere, really, didn't they? They came from nowhere, built this massive stadium and whatever, and I got a knock on the door, and do you want to come up to Exeter? And I kind of made the decision quite early in the season. Once I made that decision, I got selected for England Sevens, had an amazing experience there, came back, was on the form, in the form of my career, started every game for Bristol for the rest of the season, played in the Premiership semi-final, and then them trying to get me to stay, but I'd already signed for Exeter.
Made a mental choice.
Mental and contractual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your time at Exeter?
So 3 years at Exeter, and in the third year we got promoted, so that's 2 promotions. And yeah, had a good time. It was challenging at first. They were very much like they'd been in the Championship forever. So how they played when I first went there was not how I was used to playing. It was like all the forwards would just follow each other in a group, and I'd be like, what's happening? But to be fair, Rob Baxter went from a coach who had a kind of Championship mentality to a real visionary, actually.
Took it on massively, didn't he?
Yeah, and they play fantastic rugby. But I chose to leave Exeter. I had a really bad injury at Exeter, and in that period, which was a groin, I ruptured my groin off the bone. And for a kicker,
sounds painful.
Not ideal for a kicker. It took like 13 months to get back properly. So in that time, they had to bring in another 10, Gareth Steenson, who was again an unbelievable goal kicker. Yeah. And I came back, and I kind of was just always head to head with him, and it was just this kind of like butting heads all the time, and one person was always going to lose out, and he was just edging me more than I was edging him. And so I kind of bowed out, essentially, decided to do a year in France.
Good experience?
Good experience, yeah, tough. Yeah. Tougher than I was expecting.
And you have to speak French or not?
Well, not many of the teams spoke English. Oh, well, they did speak English, but they didn't.
They knew the right words.
They didn't let on to me that they actually spoke English until about at the end of the pre-season. Really? We were on a night out. I'd spent all pre-season thinking that none of them spoke English, and then after a few
he was in trouble then.
I was like, so I had to learn French, really, just as much as the calls were concerned. But it wasn't easy, and I went with my back then fiance, who found it really difficult, but it was good. There's some really great parts of the experience. It's just so totally different than rugby in the UK.
The culture of rugby is different over there, isn't it?
Everything. It's just you'd finish halfway through the day, everyone would go off, have a few wines, a few cigarettes, a bit of food, and they'd come back and train again.
Maybe that's the sort of place I should have played rugby.
Yeah, I mean, you see it in the way they play, don't you? And their kind of how relaxed they are and how they express themselves. And we're pretty uptight.
Yeah, we are.
And I think you see that as well in how we play. So neither's right or wrong, I think. It's just different.
So a year in France, which was a great experience, but tough.
You're happy to get back. But I'm glad I did it, yeah.
And then where did you actually finish your career?
So when I was in France, Richard Hill, who was my coach at Bristol.
I know Richard.
He was hired as the director of rugby at Worcester Warriors.
Yep.
And he gave me a call to see if I would come back because I played for I think 5 years under him. Come back, he needed another number 10 at Worcester. I said, yeah, absolutely, that'd be brilliant. So I went from kind of a year in France playing not top level rugby to coming back and being in the Premiership again around like some fantastic players, and it was brilliant.
Good time there.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. We had a bit of a sticky kind of unpleasant end to my career once Richard Hill got let go, and they got in Dean Ryan, and that didn't go well.
Well, there's always stories. It's the same in any commercial business. Relationships change in life, don't they?
That's it.
And where do you think the world of rugby is at the moment?
I think it's in a tough place, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
I do think it's in a tough place. I think they just haven't moved forward with the times in any respect, in my personal opinion. I think they fail to understand how to market the sport properly.
Yep.
I think they've got some superhumans that play rugby, and superhumans should really be easy to market. Like they are absolute physical superhuman specimens, and I don't think there are characters. They don't make characters out of the players in rugby, and I think that's a big thing. I think the rules are tough to get behind for kids. My son loves rugby. He watches a game of sevens. His mouth is open for 14 minutes because he gets it.
Yeah, I get that.
He lasts for about 15 minutes with a 15s game before he's just like, what's happening? In
terms of, where do you think that is? The physicality side of it, the way that it's just stop-start, for sure. And I think the rules and the way that it's structured, it doesn't help. I think the other thing is that it's the same game as it was 20, 30 years ago, but the humans that are playing it are completely different. It's a different sport now.
So you've got 15 people who are all absolute beasts, essentially, and 15 people on the other side who are beasts. They didn't used to be like that.
They didn't. No.
And so you kind of, you're now trying to run through brick walls to get to the try line. And it does become tiresome when you're constantly watching scrums and box kicking the whole time.
It's an interest. I mean, before we sat down, we had a couple of minutes, and I said to you, I love my football.
Yeah.
I'm very passionate about sport. Full stop. I love my football. Big Arsenal fan. I don't attach myself with the England national side in football. Funnily enough, I like my rugby as well. I'm a Quins fan. We sponsor a local rugby club. Love the internationals, be it the Six Nations, be it the autumn internationals. But the atmosphere in the stadiums isn't the same. And I think that makes it a very difficult game to grow.
Yeah.
I think the physicality side, especially, we touched on that a little bit earlier, makes it difficult. It's pretty much what you're saying. And I think there is still a bit of an elitism to it, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, and it's hard to get past that. You know, if in this day and age, if you're going to grow something super fast and super big, if you can't explain it to a child very quickly and them understand it, then you're on an uphill battle, because they are the future of anything. And so if children aren't getting it and they're just like, I don't understand it, it just makes it really difficult to grow it. And children will make parents go to a rugby match, and if they're not making their parents go to a rugby match, the parents won't go to a rugby match.
No, and I think also, that physical side of it, I mean, there's rumours they're going to try and stop people heading the ball in football.
Yeah, I mean, what?
Where are we going?
Yes.
Where are we going? I mean, and that's going to affect, I suppose you can move it onto cricket. We'll probably have to play with a tennis ball soon.
Yeah, I know. Where does it stop? I know you got to look after the children, but at the same time, what they get from the sport is just so much.
Same as boxing.
And I still, I'm not a scientist, so this is just my personal opinion. Until you get to the age of 16, you're not big enough to cause real damage to each other. You're just not. You don't get repetitive head injury at a young age. Even as an adult, and where I was concerned, I'm a fly half. Every now and then I'll go into a hard tackle, and it would rock me a little bit. That if you want to look at who has the issues, there's only one place you need to look. It's the front row.
Yep.
They are obviously the ones with the most head injury.
Yep.
And it's obvious why.
Repeat situation, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, going back to your rugby, you're out of it now. I know you're doing a bit of coaching. Do you miss playing rugby?
I was definitely ready to stop, for sure. I miss a crowd. I used to love playing in front of a big crowd. I miss the big occasion. I miss being with mates all day, every day. Yeah. There's nothing else like it, really. And it was a fantastic period of my life. It took a lot from me, physically, emotionally, mentally, but it also gave a lot.
Gave you a lot back.
Yeah.
You mentioned the word mental toughness, that it pushed a lot of pressure onto you. Are you good sort of with your mental well-being generally? Has it always been? I'm not. I suffer with anxiety, well documented on the podcast, depression. Some people, I've got mates of mine, and they've just got a permanent smile, and they haven't got, I'm not saying they've got anything more to smile about or not to smile about, but they just seem to sort of breeze through everyday life. And I've had lots of conversations with various people. Are you one of these smiley people who get on with it, or do you have your tough days?
I'd say both, for sure. I think actually I'm only in the last probably 12 months have I started to really find the lessons that rugby gave me and understand what that looks like for me now.
Right.
I almost used to care too much.
Yeah,
and
it can be a problem, can't it?
And I care too much and be in that like fight mode all the time. And when you're fighting something,
By the way, you sound like me now.
when you're fighting something, by definition, you're right up close to it, and you can't see anything else around you.
Can't see the wood from the trees, can you?
And when you kind of step, and everything's a problem, and oh my God, there's another problem, I've got to solve it quickly. But when you step back and you start to see things for what they really are, there are very few problems in life
that can't be dealt with.
That can't be dealt with. What's a problem? I mean, if my kids don't wake up, or I don't wake up, or the sun doesn't come up again, that's a problem. Yeah. And I think rugby, or professional sports, especially professional team sport, but rugby in particular, it gives you some really good lessons. You don't always know the lessons at the time, but they come through in the end.
Is that maturity? Do we as men, do we mature later in life than maybe? I mean, I look at my parents. My mum always seemed more mature than my dad. My wife would certainly say she's more mature than me. But is that something there, or is it just?
I think it's probably less maturity and more a case of being happy to be vulnerable around people, around other men.
Yeah, you
wouldn't talk about certain stuff.
No. Back in the day, I mean, you back in my era, not at all.
But rugby and sport in general, I would say the majority of it, when it coming down to whether you're successful or not, 90% probably mental and 10% odd is physical. Yet we spent 99% of our time on our physical and 1 to 0% of our time on our mental.
Yeah. Well, I'm a golfer. Not very good at that either. And that definitely is, the majority of that is up in your brain.
Absolutely, isn't it?
It's crazy. I mean, I think it's partly because the ball's still, but I'd see it in team sport as well, in various ways. I want to move you on to your property world. Professional rugby. You went to uni. How did you get into the property world?
So whilst I was playing rugby, I was always interested in property. I bought my first flat in Bristol, basement flat in Bristol, and it was a doer-upper.
Did it come with goldfish in it? Because they're normally really damp, aren't they?
There was some damp, that's for sure, yeah. And so I did a renovation on that property, and it was a 3-bed, and then moved 2 of the lads in, and shared that for a couple of years, and then moved to another club, and then did the same again. And then I ended up at Worcester, bought an old cottage with a kind of side garden, renovated the cottage, got planning permission for a new house next to it, sold the cottage, built the new house, moved into the new house.
Why did you bother playing rugby? You sounded as though you're doing really well here in the property world.
I know. And then once I sold that, I kind of retired on selling that, basically. And that kind of launched me into what I thought I wanted to do, which was property development.
Yeah.
My brother was, at the time, he was in Dubai, also in property, 8 years in kind of high-end real estate sales over there, and he was moving back as I was retiring from rugby, so we thought let's kind of get together and do something together. We started off doing student lets, basically. Yep. So went from something small, 5 beds, 6 bed, 8 beds, and just kind of got bigger and bigger, and ended up being kind of moving into the purpose-built student accommodation stuff.
Yep.
40 bed unit, purpose-built blocks and whatever. Through that period, I met a good friend through Chichester Rugby Club. When I moved back, I started playing for Chichester Rugby Club for a little bit, called Nick Shopland, and he's a big contractor in the local area. He does a lot of house building for Barclays and all those kind of guys. Right. We partnered up because he was doing all of our renovation and build work. Yep. And so we partnered up and started doing residential development as well. Yep. Did a couple of projects together. We were doing a lot of lettings, a lot of sales through estate agents. My brother wasn't happy with the service we were getting. He was getting, yeah. So we decided to open up our own estate agency.
Right, in Bristol?
In Portsmouth.
Right,
called Nexa Properties. That was in the basement of one of our blocks that were going to be 2 studio apartments, and my brother said, why don't we turn this into an agency instead? Yeah. I was like, okay, why not? So we started the agency, scaled that. That's kind of like more of an American Dubai model. Yep. So just like one hub, and the agents cover a big area, and they get a big portion of the commission, and they're your kind of sole point of contact kind of thing. You're like your realtor. And then, through that process and kind of being a kind of at every angle of the property industry, we start to see issues in the market and
challenges,
the challenges that kind of I felt could only be solved through technology, which is how we got into the Zump thing. Having said that, when I retired from rugby, I hadn't even pretty much sent an email. So going into technology, so going into technology after that was a big step forward. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing.
It's moved on greatly as well, hasn't it?
Yeah,
it has really moved on. Technology, apps.
Yeah,
the way that people use emails, computers, the way that people don't talk.
Yeah,
interesting enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you got into Zump.
Yeah. So I mean, the right from the beginning, the problem we were trying to solve with Zump was that you see it as kind of like an iceberg. There's the tip of the iceberg, which is representative of what's actually on the market for sale on Rightmove.
Yep.
And what we're finding was our agents were speaking to people every day, and they'd have a chat, and they'd be like, "Okay, so you're looking for a property. You've got property to sell. Why don't we get your property listed? So you put yourself in a better position." No, I don't want to list my property until I found what I want.
That's been so back. I mean, many years ago, many moons. I was in a estate agency, and that was always one of the problems. People didn't, and it's like a chicken and egg.
It's chicken and egg.
People don't want to put their property on the market, and it would be, well, because, I mean, everyone thinks they've got the best property in the world. Oh, it's going to sell overnight, and then I'm going to be under pressure to find somewhere, and I don't want that pressure. But then actually, if we don't put property on the market, as you say, you can't see it, can
Absolutely.
you?
And so there's time and time again the same conversation. When we start to look at the kind of underlying data, it all backed it up. There are relatively a tiny number of properties that are on Rightmove, Zoopla or whatever.
Not one of my favourites, Rightmove, by the way.
No,
one of my favourites.
Me neither, nor the agents. But there are millions and millions of people who are actively looking that have a property to sell that aren't on the market. Mm-hmm. And so the problem really, or the solution we're trying to manufacture was, how do we bring those properties to the surface so people can start connecting more easily and finding what they want. You know, I've been in the process for the last few years of, I'm looking, and I've got an estate agency, and I've been looking, but I haven't wanted to put mine on the market because I had zero confidence I can find what I want.
Yeah.
But if I could just put my property somewhere in some network,
so people can see it,
where people can see it or at least match with it, you know, and they can put their buyer profile in the network. And
a bit like dating, really, isn't it?
A bit like dating, a bit like LinkedIn. You know, there's different levels of intent of selling. You know, there is kind of open to interest. There's I'm ready to sell. There's I'm on the market. There's if someone made me an offer I can't refuse. And then there is I'm not moving no matter how much money you give me.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of people, a lot more people in that middle bracket than there are in the top bracket.
Like, I mean, I've never actually looked at how many people, but there's a number of people I know over the years that have bought property by actually dropping a handwritten letter through the letterbox and saying, look, I know you're not on the market, but I'm really interested in this. And I know a number of people that have actually done deals that way.
Yeah.
So how is Zump going?
It's good. It's been a real journey and a lot of learning. It's taught us a lot about so many things in business and you know, trying to build a consumer-facing product is incredibly difficult.
Very tough.
Incredibly difficult. We've recently pivoted in the last 4 months to a more of a B2B model, right, or a B2B2C. So we were previously kind of flirting with the idea of including agents or not including agents. Will people be comfortable and happy dealing direct? And I think where we landed was that most people still wouldn't be happy dealing direct from what the kind of from the feedback and data that we've got, and the few people that would still be happy to use an agent. So where we really struggled was the distribution, was getting it into enough people's hands to make it valuable. You know, if you're going to create something where the success comes down to how many people are in the network, you need a lot of people in the network.
You do.
And agents are the best distribution channel for something like this.
Good or bad, and there are good agents out there for sure. And I know lots in the industry. We've never really found a way without having estate agents?
So far, and technology has a big few steps to go until we get to that point. I think estate agents will end up becoming more on the brokerage side, more on the negotiation, deal making side.
Yeah.
Listing a property, I mean, what is it really? Like, take some pictures and put it on Rightmove.
I think more so today than ever, it is like that.
Yeah.
I think back in the day, good estate agents were good about getting photographs, about, the amount of times that, you'd want to take a property and we say, we'll come back and take it because it's pissing down with rain. Mm-hmm. But you're right now, with AI and the things that Coral, who does the podcast here for me, she can make me look half decent. That's how magic the world is today. Yeah. But back in the day, property was something that photographs, the way the language was written, it was part of it. And
it was a people business, and we kind of want to bring it back to, we want agents to be spending their time getting connections through and contacting those connections and actually winning business, not spending their time knocking on people's doors and posting letters. It's kind of like...
So moving on, take me, I'm a good example, I'm not great with IT. How do I get into the world of Zump? I want to sell something, or I'm an agent, either way. How do we go about building a relationship?
So you'd become a partner agent of Zump. We would integrate with your CRM and your database, and then all of your database would be essentially put into properties, buyers, and then all of that data would go into the network with all of the other databases, and the algorithms would start creating matches. Yep. And you basically have a dashboard, a Zump-sided dashboard for you as an agency, where you can see every one of your properties, every one of your buyers, all of the matches, all of the contact details. And we also market to the consumer as well. So we bring in buyers and sellers direct into Zump and then push them to our agency partners to connect to them. So every buyer or seller that you have, that you bring into the network, is digitally tagged to you. So you can literally follow them every step of the way, and all of their actions always flow back to you. So if they connect with a property, it comes back to you. If one of the buyers connects with one of your properties, it comes back to you. So it's very much hands-free kind of automation.
Yeah.
You look at an agency CRM at the moment, and how they have to farm their own database. It's so manual and clunky and difficult. The idea is a collection of lots of databases creates a network.
Yeah.
A database on its own is only as good as that database.
Yeah.
And so it's very difficult to leverage that database in a way that will create a lot of value. But there is a lot of value in there if you combine it with all of the other databases.
And your geographical spread goes to where?
So we're currently rebuilding an MVP to launch in the Portsmouth area. And we want to kind of quickly scale out from there, really. For us, it's really important that we focus the geography quite tight.
Yep.
Because the more databases we get in a tight geography, the more connections that will be created in that geography. If we kind of go sporadically and advertise
if you're going weird and one outside of your... Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
And business has been tough because of the learning curve, been tough because you want to widen your network, tough in terms of employing people?
Tough. As I said, it's tough building a consumer-facing product. There's a lot that you learn when you do that. Technology provides so much opportunity to change things and create things, and there's a level of luxury that you're given as to, I can literally do anything. And it's almost like a toy set.
Yeah.
And saying no to stuff and being disciplined and understanding that, no, I don't do that feature now because that's not actually going to do anything. It's not going to push the needle right now, but it's really sexy and exciting to do it.
I've seen that.
I made that mistake many, many times, building a feature and hoping that was going to be our saviour. And we've learned so much over the last 4 years that we feel in a really good, I almost feel like second-time founders now.
Well, when I have people on that are in the property world on Blighty Talks Bricks, I used to have a magic wand And I used to give that magic wand to her. But I've decided this morning on the way down here, I've thrown the magic wand away because it's not fucking working. So no magic wand. If there was 3 things that you could change in the world of property, what would they be?
The planning system is a joke. It's a disgrace, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think joke's a hard enough word. I mean, and Labour are making lots of noises, and I'm not seeing anything there that gives me any positivity at all.
Yeah. It's still too difficult to build a house. There's too many people doing too many different things. I genuinely thought that by now we'd be
moved on it. It'd be a
moving into
better process,
panel technology or something, some kind of prefab stuff. But it's just so difficult. The supply chain and the kind of logistics is so difficult. So it just hasn't, and the insurance part and the mortgage part, and then the conveyancing is a disgrace.
3 major things, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, if you get planning, conveyancing, and the building part right, then you're suddenly turning over a huge number more properties a year.
Well, the one thing that, and is, as I said to you just before we sat down, I mean, I'm amazed. It's all down to the quality of people, and again, you've been lovely having you on, but it's the same things that come out from the people that I'm talking to in the property world, of all experiences, of all ages. Mm-hmm. It just seems to be that our governments, not just this government, our governments don't understand the basics, don't involve business people that are in the front line.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we're going to try and deal with that going forward. But you've hit all of the marks that you said. Comes across quite negative when you and I are chatting like this, doesn't it?
I mean, I think it is negative. I think it is a negative time in property. I don't think there's been, to my memory, there's not been much more negative time, really.
I totally agree.
It's got worse and worse and worse, and I cannot see how it's going to get better, because even if they get the planning through, which they're not going to get through,
no.
If they did and 200,000 more homes came to the surface to build, who's going to build them? There just isn't the people to build them, and they don't understand that at all. And if there isn't the people to build them, all that happens is the build costs shoot up again, and then it becomes unviable to build. So it's just a tough chicken and egg thing a little bit.
You're absolutely right, and you've hit the nail on the head for sure. I want to try and leave us on a positive thing. Your business now, you're feeling, and when you sat down before we went on air, you said that you can see that you're turning the corner. Is that the case? You're in a better place now. You've got a lot of experience, a few bruises, going back to a bit like playing rugby, isn't it? Really, come out the game, got a few bruises, go again. But you're in a good place now.
Definitely, yeah. We feel like we're in a good place, on a good path. The problem we've always kept at the heart of everything, and we've not been emotional about the solution. We're happy to change the solution as long as it solves the problem. And I think the solution that we're on to now and the path we're on is really good, and I think it's going to change a lot.
Well, good, and I hope that's the case. I agree with you. It's the toughest I've ever known it as well, so you're not on your own. And I know a lot of people in the industry are feeling the same way. So I wish you well with Zump.
Thank you.
I'll certainly keep my eye on it, and please reach out if there's anything that we can do. Let us know. It's been lovely to have you on. Been great to meet you.
Yeah.
I did watch you play back in the day a bit. You were good. You were quick. I think playing rugby, you've got to be quick.
If you want to get away from the big guys, yeah.
I was never quick. But Danny, thanks very much.
Yeah,
really enjoyed your company.
Yeah,
appreciate your time. Thanks very much. Cheers. Viewers, listeners, another end comes to another podcast. I think points Danny makes about rugby, very interesting, certainly factual. And I think what he says about the property world, it's, we're all scratching our head, but hopefully brighter times are ahead of us. Stay safe, take care. See you soon.